Hello and welcome to Tabletop Odyssey, you crazy people. My name is Jay, and today I want to talk about Kill Team and possibly trying to use archetypes to figure out the game and perhaps maybe get a little bit tiny better at the game by using these and considering these when you start the game and how you're going to approach a specific game of Kill Team. So what do I mean by archetypes? Basically, you might be familiar with the phrase the Holy Trinity, or in other mediums games and such forth, you know, like a fighter, melee, range, tank, all this kind of stuff. You'll be familiar with those as concepts, but I am going to try and break them down into 4 or 5 concepts, talk about each one, and then the key thing is utilizing each of these in a way that allows your army to win, or your kill team to win. And a lot of this is actually going to depend on trying to identify what your enemy's list is good at. Now, I'm not expecting you, because I certainly don't know, to know everything that your opponent's list is going to do. Unless you've been playing 40k for quite a while, or you've had a lot of games of Kill Team, which if you have, you probably don't need this video. So like, how do you identify what your opponent has? Number one, if you're in a casual game, just ask. I will often be like, what's that guy good at? Is he good in shooting? Is he good in melee? What does he do? You know, like if there's a handful of them, or maybe just overall try and ask them, like try and get a feel what the list is actually going to do. Are they going to run up and hit you? Or do they want to sit back and shoot you? That kind of stuff. If they're not prepared to tell you, then try and have a quick look at the like stats or something. You don't need to know everything, and just getting your bum handed to you in a game is just as good as a learning experience as, you know, reading it. In fact, it's probably a better learning experience than reading it. So what am I actually talking about? Well, I want to talk about these little combo things over here, these little list of archetypes that I've made. There's probably more formal definitions somewhere, but this is just the way I sort of approach the game. Now, top one, your melee fighters, your tank from an MMO, if you want to call it like that. But it's not necessarily a tank. These guys are actually good in combat. These are the people you want to run up and smack somebody in the face. Maybe they're your leader with a power sword. Maybe they're your big orc instead who's got no range, and you just want to get in there and smash somebody's face. Your melee orientated characters. Now, the problem with Kill Team is that a lot of characters have, you know, maybe they actually can do melee and they have some rubbish shooting. Like the Primaris Reavers have a pistol, but I would still put the Reavers in the melee fighter category. Ranged, I put ranged instead of like shooty, because even though it's 40k and everybody pretty much has a gun, you know, there are wizards and stuff like that, or there's a handful in the original Kill Team, and I think maybe more with commanders. I haven't played commanders, so this list may not necessarily translate 100% to commanders, so do keep that in mind. But ranged, these are the people who are primarily good at shooting. Yes, they'll have a melee attack, most models do, but if you get in melee, you're going to die. That's what these are the guys you want to sit back and shoot your opponent. Makes sense? Pretty simple concepts right now. I put range melee combo because there are actually a couple of there are people who are actually semi-okay at both, you know, not terribly, not amazing at either, but not terrible at either. Not terrible at either. Lols. I put these like a Primaris Intercessor might be a good example here. They're okay at both. They can shoot, they can fight, they're okay. Depending on who or what they're fighting, you know, I would class them as sort of like an all-rounder or a range melee combo. And support, these are, you know, maybe your guys with the Auspex, maybe your, is it not Scout, the comms guy, who, you know, giving +1 boss and that kind of thing. I believe that like there's a handful in Kill Team as there are, like obviously there's upgrades, but there's debuffers in the auras, like the Skitari. They are sort of, even though they're good at fighting, having one of them who's going to then debuff in an aura is sort of like a support, but it's like a melee fighter support. So you can see the definitions aren't necessarily strict, but your support guys are the people who are going to buff people one way or another, maybe giving pluses to their rolls or that kind of thing. And like in commanders, the support roles I think are probably more prevalent. I haven't actually bought commanders, so I don't 100% know, but you get the gist. I mean, those three are essentially the Holy Trinity, aren't they? You've got your melee, it's essentially your tanks, your range shooting, and your healers. Not not strictly in that sort of sense. We don't have the healing kind of thing as much, and we don't have somebody who's necessarily going to soak the damage. Well, you might actually do, but you buy them in the melee fighter category. And then this other last one is just fodder. So I'm thinking of stuff like poxwalkers. Somebody like, they're not necessarily absolute garbage, but they're cheerful. You just put them in the way of somebody to either slow them down, or maybe you swarm somebody and you actually try and kill somebody with them. But they can be utilized tactically to do a few different things, and we'll talk about that right now in the way. So this is the reason I'm mentioning these. I think this is sort of like a rock paper scissors kind of concept. Your melee fighters will beat a ranged fighter in combat. That's the whole gist of this, right? And your ranged fighters, if your ranged people manage to just shoot the melee fighters before they get there, and they might kill them before they get there, then the ranged people will win that. The problem with the ranged and the melee combo is that, in theory, melee versus melee fighters might not work out well for the melee fighter versus a ranged melee combo. That should, by my categories, fit the melee fighters, and so on and such forth. And there are, as I said, there's no strict definitions. Somebody you think your best shooter might not be as good as your opponent's range guys. Therefore, you still might lose. But you need to try and utilize your advantages where and when you can. So I played a couple of games. I once played against I was Primaris Intercessors, literally the only kill team I have. And I was playing basically an Imperial Guard gun line. Now, he did have a couple of people who were decent in melee, but it was pretty obvious the way that the game started and the way the game was going to go that he was going to sit at the back and try and shoot me. Yes, he'd try and claim the objectives because the kill team is an objective game and you still need that, but he had the advantage when it came to shooting. Now, I had 3 intercessors, so they're pretty decent at shooting, and I had 3 reavers who are pretty good at combat. But obviously, if I sit back with my 3 reavers and don't do anything, he isn't going to move to my reavers. My reavers have to move up. And my intercessors, I had the option to charge in. Now, my shooting would still kill some of his shooting, and his shooting would still kill some of mine. So that was you can take your pick there. You can either run up and try and shoot them, or you can run up and try and kill them in melee, or you can try and shoot them. So I decided in this case that my intercessors were going to shoot and my reavers were going to charge. And so he's got a gun line, and that's the way I'm going to play it. And that worked out well. So my shooting, I tried to concentrate on his best shooting, because Imperial Guard are not necessarily the most survivable thing, so my shooting can still actually do stuff. So my shooters are trying to concentrate on his best shooters, and my reavers are trying to get also to his best shooters, but generally just get there as quickly or as best they can without focusing, without taking too much damage. And that was just a really way of seeing well, if he's all ranged, I'm melee and a ranged melee combo, then I need to try and utilize my strengths against his. Very simple like that. Sometimes I can't work out what my opponent has. As I said, I'm not that amazingly familiar with the universe or anything, but you can appreciate that. Then flip that on its head. Literally, the next game I had was against 10 witches. Now, the witches, the way that he'd built them, not necessarily all witches are like this, the Dark Eldar witches, he'd built them primarily to do well in melee. Some of them still had ranged, so he had basically most melee. He had a combination of melee and that's this direction thing doing my own. He had a combination of melee fighters and a combination and some ranged and melee combo people. We've not had support and fodder in this examples, but hopefully you can see how this would apply anyway. So he worked out with my intercessors. My ranged melee combo was better than his ranged because he was primarily melee. So what did I do? Well, in that case, I put my reavers at the back, put my shooting at the back. If you're trying to win, you've got to do stuff like this. And I made him come to me, and I'm trying to shoot his ranged, which my ranged did probably have the advantage in this case. And then when he gets close, I'm going to charge everybody with everything. Well, maybe not my shooty people. Obviously, if I can still shoot, then that's the case. But once they get in combat, you need to at least have some sort of use. So there you have it. And again, that worked out favorably for me. So it's all about this sort of rock, paper, scissors kind of thing where, melee beats ranged in melee and range beats melee if they don't get there. And yes, you might want to swamp with your fodder. You might be like, well, if I have a shooty line and I've got some fodder, maybe I could put some fodder against somebody and shoot the rest of them. That would be fine. It's just about trying to utilize this as a concept. I guess it's it's breaking the game down into a very basic way of thinking. And you might be like, obviously, if you've played a lot of the game and you're very good at the game, then this is completely useless for you. But for somebody new like me, like into the universe, I guess is what I'm trying to say, you don't really, you can't look at a Dark Eldar witch and know exactly what weapon each weapon does, because you don't know, you've never heard of it before. I'm just sort of trusting that what they know, their own stuff, and what they're saying is correct. I'm just trusting that, because I've got too much going on trying to remember my own stuff and trying to remember their stuff. It becomes quite difficult. So I'm trying to break the game down into small pieces that I understand, which is basically like, me good against this in this situation, he good against me in this situation, and then I'm playing accordingly. Yes, it has mild success, but I guess against somebody who's tactically better than I am, more familiar with the game, they'll obviously beat me. But breaking it down like that, I think, is very helpful. And I mean, it doesn't just apply to this game; it applies to pretty much all games. But Kill Team, with the amount of options, I know there's 16 factions. Each faction probably has a minimum of 2 stuff in it, so I don't know the amount of upgrades, but amount of units, but we're probably looking at like 50. I can't remember all 50 very easily. It's going to take me a while playing a lot of games before I remember what each kind of stuff does. So I'm trying to simplify it, basically. And with commanders, that's increasing. Everybody knows there's another 50 units that each, not each faction can use, that the total number of units that factions can use. And again, it's like, and how do I break it down? And I try and break them down to this core, like, rock, paper, scissors kind of concept. Yeah, I'm only here to talk about that. I think hopefully you agree with me. It's a fairly simplistic way of thinking about it, but it should be an effective way. Let me know if you do this already, or if you're going to start doing this kind of thing, or maybe let me know how you approach the game as a whole. Maybe you don't simplify it like me. Maybe you complicate it and you go into the minutiae of the details because you're so familiar with the game. But I do, for anybody new starting out in the game, simplify it. When you're making your own list, simplify, find out where they fit into these categories, and then try and play accordingly. It's the easiest thing, it's the best thing that I did at the start, and I still happily recommend it and suggest that you use it. So yeah, let me know how you approach it. Basically, let me know if you're going to adopt this or if it's something you've not thought about before. If you like this video, you should definitely like. If you're not already subscribed, then come on, mate, come on. Subscribe if you want to. It's more than fine if you don't. Thank you to all my thank you. Wow, English, it's very hard sometimes. Thank you to my Patreons. I do really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Have a most beautiful day, and goodbye. Bye, guys.